Guys, let's be honest here. We haven't seen a real alt season in 2025 yet. A lot of people are saying that there's never going to be an alt season again and that this time is actually different. But then today, a lot of people were shouting, yeah, it's alt season because alts went up like 5 to 10%. So what is true? And that's what I wanted to do in today's video. So in today's video, I want to break down if alt season is coming back, but with real actual data. And that's what you see here. So this is my Altseason cheat sheet with all the indicators if alt season is coming back or not. So we have economic macro indicators. We have comparisons to other assets, which is important, like, for example, Bitcoin dominance, gold, ETH BTC. Of course, the regulatory landscape is super important. Macro, market sentiment, supply and demand, on-chain data. And so I want to break down the full picture of whether alt season is truly dead or just getting started. So let's dive right into it. First of all, what is alt season? And alt season basically refers to a period where altcoins outperform Bitcoin. We saw this here in 2017-2018 cycle. So this is the Bitcoin dominance chart. So which means altcoins versus the Bitcoin price. And we see 2017-2018, it dropped enormously by 50%. And we saw this as well in the 2020-2021 cycle. Usually what happens is that Bitcoin price performs very, very well, that it tops out and that it starts consolidating. And then investors, they tend to rotate this profit into smaller alt cap coins. But the problem is this cycle, most of the capital that went into Bitcoin, so most of the money that made the Bitcoin price go up was via the ETFs and were institutional investors. But then the problem is, I don't think these institutional investors will buy your favorite altcoin. Maybe they buy like the top 10 to top 20% altcoins. But then again, I think they will just most likely stay with Bitcoin. And then the other problem is, we still don't have any altcoin ETFs. Another thing we can look at, and I wrote it right here. So as for timing, in both 2017 and 2018, alt rallies began 320 days after the Bitcoin halving. And that's why a lot of people on YouTube, on crypto Twitter, are a bit furious that alt season isn't here yet, because they're used to both previous cycles that alt season happens 320 days after the Bitcoin halving, which should align, if we go here, which should align with March 5th. March 5th is here, 320 days after the halving. And what we saw after March 5th, Bitcoin dominance continued to increase. But what if I told you that this isn't really the reason why we see an alt season, and that alt season is basically, well, the market is basically just moving like it should, and that the reason why it happened before is that the timing just aligned with deeper forces at play. And these deeper forces are, and now let's go over to my next tab, liquidity. And I want you to really focus on this, this chart. Maybe pause if you have to. This is the most important thing, whether alt season is coming back or not. So liquidity drives everything. And so this is the alt season from last cycle. In the white, we have Bitcoin dominance, so altcoins versus Bitcoin. The red are the interest rates, the blue is the Fed liquidity, and the orange is global liquidity. And last cycle, alt season didn't start until the Fed starts cutting interest rates when they started QE again, and when global liquidity started to rise. All this was needed for altcoins to outperform Bitcoin. And I think this time is just no different. This is the reason, not the timing, the 320 days after Bitcoin halving. It's this. Why? And it's actually very simple. The more excess capital, so excess liquidity there is in circulation, and the cheaper the money, well, the interest rates, the more we get a risk-on environment where investors move further down the risk curve. And that's the shift that historically fueled these altcoin runs. not the timing, like I said. And what you have to understand is that this is not a crypto phenomenon. You see this in your everyday life with everything. So for example, I have friends who are Pokemon card investors. That's a thing. And this moves up as well when global liquidity goes up, when Fed liquidity goes up, when interest rates are low. For example, used cars are the same. It's basically everything that's non-essential or luxury. And these are the things that will move. So liquidity is the best indicator of when high-risk assets, altcoins, will begin to outperform lower risk ones, like in this case, Bitcoin. So what you just have to do, it's actually super easy. Look when the Fed is going to pivot, and then you can position yourself in altcoins. So let's move back to our cheat sheet, and I'll go over everything one by one. So of course, one of the things that's super important right now is the macro correlation. A lot of people are even calling Bitcoin and the crypto market BTC 500 because it just follows the S&P 500. So I've gave it an important factor of 50%. So basically this column is the important factor and the weights, because not every metric has the same importance level. For example, let's say here the gold price, to me, it only has like a 5% impact on Altseason. Although I give global liquidity, for example, 100%. But back to the macro correlation, I give it 50%. This is in general. Maybe today, because of all the tariffs and all the uncertainty, maybe I can give this a little bit higher. Let's give it 60, let's say. And then, of course, yeah, we have the tariffs. And this is the thing that's currently going all over the markets and putting fear into the markets. I wrote about this extensively on Medium. I made 2 articles. I even put out my latest YouTube video, so I'm not going to go over this too in depth. The only thing you have to know is that there is at the moment the 9 trillion debt wall. The US needs to refinance more than 9 trillion of debt within the 6 months. So what is the Fed, what is Donald Trump and the US trying to do? Well, by throwing tariffs around left and right, they try to maneuver the Fed by causing a recession, or, and this is the important thing, convincing the market that one is around the corner, because this would drop the 10-year treasury yield, making it easier for the government to refinance its debt at a lower interest rate cost. This is the most important thing, what you have to understand, and this is the reason why at the moment there's a lot of fear, and when there's a lot of fear and uncertainty, this is not good for altcoins. So I think I gave it a bearish to neutral. Why neutral? Because I think this is actually, we saw peak fear, and of course, I think this will help lower the interest rates, which is super important for the markets. So then you have to remember what will happen. Will Powell answer beforehand or not? So will he start QE? Will he cut interest rates, or will he wait until something breaks? So this is something you cannot know beforehand. You can only guess or speculate. So my advice is, if you want to position yourself in altcoins, wait. You don't have to pull the trigger yet. Just wait until there is a clear sign, until the Fed eases and the interest rates are getting lower. So like I said, this puts a lot of uncertainty in the markets, and that's why next up we have the investor exposure to risk assets. And this is how investors worldwide are positioning themselves. And as you can see right here at the moment, a lot of investors worldwide are going risk off and buying risk off assets, which can be, for example, like treasuries and cash. Of course, this is not good for altcoins. And yeah, this is because of the tariffs and because of global liquidity, which was weaker before. And this acts on the market as a lag, and this is why risk exposure is going down. So now let's go over to global liquidity, which I gave 100%. This is super important, and luckily, global liquidity started to rebound, and this matters a lot, especially for altcoins, because altcoins historically aligned with periods of abundant global liquidity. Because of the global liquidity cycle, we saw this enormous bull markets in crypto. This is the reason. That's why I gave this 100%. I put it even in bold because this is the single most important metric to see if alt season is coming or not. And another thing I want to say is that global liquidity needs to be abundant for it to go to risk assets. If it's just enough to support the financial markets, then we won't see an alt season yet. So at the moment, the rising global liquidity is driven by two factors. One is the US dollar, which is super, super weak, and a little bit improved central bank liquidity, mostly from the PBOC, and lately a little bit from the Fed as well. So global liquidity rose last week to $176.2 trillion. And so far this year, it has expanded by $5 trillion. Keep in mind, and this is the most important thing as an investor, is that there's a 13-week lag between global liquidity and Bitcoin. So based on this, which is right directionally about 83% of the time, based on the research report from Lynn Eldon, global liquidity should be moving upwards and pushing Bitcoin up, which will also normally pull the altcoins with it. So Michael Howell, the father of global liquidity, he expects global liquidity to move up and to peak around Q4 in 2025. But based on the short-term volatility and a lot of uncertainty, I read his article today and he moved risk off the first time this cycle. So you do with it what you will, but I tend to follow Michael Howell if he makes decisions like this. Although he mentioned that there is a chance on monetary inflation, and that's why he's still allocated to gold and to Bitcoin. But altcoins is a little bit of a different story. So let's have a look at our cheat sheet again. So next up is Fed liquidity, which is super important because the Fed is still the global economic power. And let's have a look. So at the moment, Fed liquidity is going up a little bit. So this is basically because of the TGA rundown and a little bit of a decline in the reverse repo. But that's not sustainable. We need the Fed to stop QT. And what they wrote about this is from January, the Fed minutes. And what they wrote was, if we go a little bit lower, or maybe I can, regarding the potential for significant swings in reserves over the coming months related to debt ceiling dynamics, various participants noted that it may be appropriate to consider pausing or slowing balance sheet until the resolution of this event. This is super important, and this is why the market pumped a little bit when this came out. The second important thing is as well, in their expectations of the Federal Reserve balance sheet policy, survey respondents on average saw the process of the runoff concluding mid-2025. So there were a lot of speculation that the Fed will stop QT in June 2025. And that's why on this graph I wrote here, Fed probably stops QT June 2025. And this is needed for altcoins to outperform Bitcoin. So maybe we see this in June. Then this was their latest FOMC reports. And here they stated, beginning in April, the committee will slow the pace of decline of its securities holdings by reducing the monthly redemption cap on treasury securities from 25 billion to 5 billion. So they slowed down QT a little bit. But for now, it's just still a net liquidity drain. The only thing which is positive about this for altcoins, and we saw this in May 2024 as well. So the slope of the alt BTC decline became less steep. So this is the Fed balance sheet. And this is Bitcoin dominance, but inverted. And what we see is, what we noticed when they did the same as well in May 2024, the decline, the slope, is so first it was 55 degrees and now it was 18 degrees. So we see that it works, and the reason. So, and I think we will just see the same if if the Fed stops interest rates, maybe it will be flat. And then when they start QE again, then altcoins will move upwards. Next up, and as well the second most important thing, are the interest rates. And at the moment, the interest rates from the US are still way, way, way too high. Donald Trump is trying every day to ask Powell to drop the interest rates. Even Scott Bessent said we're set on bringing the interest rates down. And if you look at the interest rates worldwide, the ECB, they cut their interest rates by 7% already. By 7 times already, always by 25 basis points. And the Fed is just lagging behind. They're just worried about crypto. And they're just worried about inflation, and that's why the Fed doesn't want to cut interest rates. And so why is this important for crypto? Basically, interest rates mean rate cuts mean the premium paid to access future liquidity becomes cheaper. And as I mentioned before, when money is cheap, investors move further down the risk curve. So this is really one of the most important metrics there is to watch for an alt season. And like I said, the moment in history when the Fed signals a shift is when the tide turns. And you don't have to look far from it. So if we go back to our Bitcoin dominance chart, just a couple of months ago, maybe I'm going to trigger a lot of people with this, but when the Fed blatantly tried to help Harris to win the presidential election, they did an emergency rate cut by 50 basis points in September. Bitcoin dominance dropped by 10% here in a matter of weeks. So this is just the reason I wanted to show you that dropping interest rates has an enormous impact on Bitcoin dominance, so altcoin season. Like I said, the ECB is cutting, the Fed is not cutting. The reason is inflation. The ECB thinks they have inflation under control. The Fed doesn't think they have inflation under control. So it's a little bit weird because last CPI, the CPI was to 2.8%. So at the moment, it's at its lowest level in 4 years, which is super, super good. And if we look at leading indicators, so I really like Trueflation to know where inflation is headed. And Trueflation is indicating 1.40% inflation. And we know this works. This works time after time. The only thing is there is just a lag. So there is a lag between the Trueflation data and the BLS report. It's about 45-day lag. So this was the last 2.4%. This was based on this. So normally inflation should drop enormously. So I don't know why the Fed is still holding back so much. I honestly think, and a lot of people will get triggered by this, I think it's just because the Fed and Powell, they don't like Donald Trump, and they don't want him reelected in the midterms, I guess. So the only thing that's positive currently, I forgot this as well. Even Goldman Sachs inflation tracker is pointing at 2% as well. So I really don't know what the Fed is waiting for. And I think next BLS report will be close to 2%. And that should give the Fed the confidence to cut their interest rates. The reason they're saying, yeah, maybe because of the tariffs, inflation will be high. But I honestly don't think that's the case. I wrote an in-depth Medium article on why these tariffs won't have too much consumer inflation, which is CPI. So, yeah. So the only thing which is helping, which is good for altcoins and crypto, is the DXY. So at the moment, the DXY is just crashing. This is very good. And Trump actually wants a weaker dollar because this will boost export and create more jobs for the American people. And what's funny, I think I have the chart open as well. What's really funny is the chart of the DXY is following almost exactly the same pattern as when Trump was in office in 2016, 2017. And it was exactly the same. So he was implementing tariffs as well. But the more important thing was that the Fed also didn't want to cut interest rates and stayed a little bit cautious, while the other central banks, like for example the ECB, they already started tightening. And so it was exactly the same scenario back then. So you could have guessed this a little bit. So let's see if it drops further. I think this will stabilize, but at the moment, this acts on risk assets as a lag as well. And I think because of this being super low, one, this helped global liquidity. And two, I think because of this, Bitcoin and altcoins will have a little bit of a breathing room. So this was the macro part. I hope you don't cut off the video because this was super important. This is basically the most important thing. And now let's go over to the comparison to other assets, because as you see here, Bitcoin dominance, I've put it at 100% as well, because Bitcoin dominance, you can just look at the chart. For example, a good friend of mine, George One Trader, he doesn't really follow all the macro stuff, but you don't have to. The chart tells everything as well. And at the moment, the trend is going up. And as you know, in crypto, the trend is your friend. So you don't have to guess. You can just wait on an actual breakdown of the trend. And if it goes, let's say, under 58%, then I think we can speak of an alt season. And of course, this will probably align with macro going into our direction. But you don't have to guess. You can just wait on Bitcoin dominance to break this long-term trend. Also, I don't know if you can see it clearly, but there is a little bit, or there was a little bit of a cup and handle forming. And this cup and handle, it measures towards 66%. And this is a target I had in mind for a long time now. I think Bitcoin dominance can go up. So if the Fed doesn't change anything, if the macro stays exactly how it is, I think we will see 66% on Bitcoin dominance. And afterwards, you can start looking for to position yourself for altcoins. Maybe, because you don't have to. That's the thing with investing. And it's a very nice saying from Warren Buffett. So investing is like a no-strike game, like in baseball. And you don't have to hit every swing. You don't have to invest in altcoins. You can just actually wait when the conditions are right, and then you invest. If the conditions are never right this cycle to invest in altcoins, you can just stay in Bitcoin or cash, and it's just that way then. So, but at the moment, nothing signals weakness. So my advice to you is just wait for an actual breakdown on Bitcoin dominance before you start investing in altcoins again. All right, next up is Bitcoin. Like I said in the beginning, oh, Bitcoin is pumping. That's nice. You can what happens every alt season before was that Bitcoin pumped, consolidated, and then the liquidity moved up to altcoins. And this is just what we need this cycle as well. And this is a very, very clean chart. I just put out the Fibonacci levels from previous cycle top to this cycle low. And the golden ratio, the 1.618, perfectly marked out the top, which everyone could have guessed basically. But what I think for alt season to happen is Bitcoin needs to consolidate. In my opinion, it needs to consolidate above 120K. And then if it chills here, then there will be an alt season. But before that, I don't think so. And also watch out, because that's the mistake a lot of people make, is that they allocate too early to altcoins. Because when Bitcoin makes this move, often it sucks a lot of liquidity out of altcoins to make this move. So watch out for this. Next up is, of course, the gold comparison, because gold is making all-time high after all-time high. It's going crazy. Why do I put this in an altcoin video? Well, basically, gold is just a strong liquidity proxy. Because if you see gold moving up like this, you know liquidity is going up, and there is signs of monetary inflation. So historically, there is also a 3 to 6 month lag from gold and Bitcoin. So first gold moves, and then 3 to 6 months later, Bitcoin moves up. Why is this important? So as I just mentioned before, it's important that Bitcoin goes to these highs, and maybe this will happen based on the historic lag between gold and Bitcoin. Next up is, and you guys will love, is ETH BTC, and this chart is horrendous. I think nobody expected it would go this low, but to me still, Ethereum is the leading altcoin. And if Ethereum will not move up, if Ethereum keeps going down, you might hate it as much as you want. But I think a strong Ethereum is needed for all the other altcoins to follow. So it might bottom out here. So this is very, very good liquidity bottom level to me. So it might have a chance to bottom out here. But then again, don't put that much weight into this. The only thing what's important for Ethereum is there's a couple of good catalysts coming up, which I think might be some good indicators for Altseason to get going. And one of these indicators is the Ethereum Pectra upgrade. And this is, let me see, first they scheduled it for the 30th of April, but then, so this is Timbico. But then again, afterwards, the developers have postponed the Pectra upgrade to May 7th. And why is this important? Because at the moment there is, so this is a shame. There's almost zero inflows into the ETFs, like only outflows 000. This hurts just to watch at this. And why is that? Well, and BlackRock said it as well. So BlackRock says that the ETFs are underperforming because they don't offer staking rewards. And you just lose that opportunity cost if you buy the ETF instead of just buying normal Ethereum and put it towards staking. So why do I tell this during the Pectra upgrade? Because the Pectra introduces major improvements to staking flexibility and validator efficiency. So the Pectra upgrade will increase the maximum validator limit from 32 Ethereum to 2048 Ethereum. And this will just reduce technical friction for large players, so institutions. And this upgrade, to me, will unlock staking-enabled Ethereum ETFs. So I think all the Ethereum ETF issuers are waiting on the Pectra upgrade to finalize. And I think then we will see a lot of Ethereum staking ETFs be allowed. And this may well be one of the catalysts that starts the alt season. What do we have next? Tech. And so I always refer back to this article because this is Joe Lubin, one of the co-founders of Ethereum. He said, we've been in discussions with ETF providers and they're already working hard on that. So they expect that to be greenlit soon. So if he tells that it's going to be greenlit soon, you can be sure that it's going to be greenlit soon because it's not gonna lie as the co-founder of Ethereum. I think, just like I said before, they're waiting on the Pectra upgrades, and then all these Ethereum ETFs, staking ETFs, will be greenlit. Yeah, so this is the same. This is from BlackRock that I just mentioned. One other thing, maybe I can go over it real quickly. A lot of people say this is a meme, but usually what we saw historically is after an upgrade, so here's already the Pectra upgrade, usually you see this on average, the price goes up by 11% 1 month later, 42% 3 months later, so and so on and so on. So this is good and this is important. So why do I speak about Ethereum in an altcoin video? Well, because I think Ethereum needs to move up for altcoins to move up. This is still the main coin. This is still the biggest altcoin. So this needs to go well. As much as you hate Ethereum, you need to cheer for it to go up, for your favorite altcoin to go up as well. But of course, Ethereum is not the only ETF. And as you see here, the ETFs that will likely get greenlit by the SEC are Litecoin, Solana, XRP, Dogecoin, HBAR, and Polkadot. So you see the approval odds are very, very well, like 90% to be approved in 2025. But it's actually crazy. Here you see all the altcoin ETFs that are being issued. So let's hope it won't be a graveyard like the Ethereum ETF, with zero inflows. But who knows? I think this puts a lot of trust into altcoins, and maybe institutional players see that as okay, it's legit. There's a lot of these ETFs. Maybe we allocate into some of them. So I think it's a net positive to me. And then, of course, we come over to the regulatory landscape. So the regulatory risk is completely gone, in my opinion. So the war on crypto is over. And you see this here. So Trump, SEC is ending crypto lawsuits and investigations. This is super, super, super important. So they ended the Binance case. They ended the Coinbase case. OpenSea, Robinhood. So this is super important because before, the SEC was really hammering on crypto, and it's not good for altcoins. Altcoins thrive when the SEC and the regulatory is behind them, is rooting for them, let's say, because Bitcoin doesn't need it. Bitcoin, there is no founder, there's no company. It's just Bitcoin. It's basically digital gold. So for Altseason, that is super important that the war on crypto is over. We see this as well. So Trump plans to sign stablecoin bill by August, which is super important. We saw as well the digital asset stockpile. This puts a lot of trust in Bitcoin and crypto in general. So all good things to me on the regulatory side, and it's needed. So bullish, because as you see here, the macro is still neutral to bearish. Comparison to other assets, neutral to bearish. So this is the tailwind we have at the moment. So next up, we come over to the market sentiment. And to me, this is one of the best research papers that has been written on Altseason. And this is a paper from Cane Island Digital. He says that Altseason is not random and that it's a distinct seasonal phenomenon, usually from January to May, and with Q2 typically the sweet spot, and May, which is next month, usually the best performing in history. So we can scroll a little bit lower, as you can see it right here, because this is very nice. So this is the ETH BTC heat map, and you can see it here. From January to May is usually the period where Ethereum outperforms Bitcoin. And as I did before, he as well calculated it with Ethereum to Bitcoin, because I think Ethereum is still a proxy for altcoins and alt seasons. So I don't put a lot of faith into this. I don't make investment decisions based on this, but I think seasonality works to an extent, just because humans are still, it's just because based on human psychology and recurring temporal conditions. So this will continue to happen time and time over again. So it's a possibility that this happens. And as I said here, this is on CoinGlass. May, you see it perfectly for Ethereum. May is the best performing month for Ethereum. So will we see that happening again? I honestly don't know. This is based on human psychology, so maybe. Let's say what I gave it only 15%. So don't make investment decisions based on this, but you can use it next to all the other signals. And this is what I said here. So no single indicator is absolute, but together they paint a useful picture for decision making. And this is what I tried to do here, basically. Next up is the Altseason index. So this is something I think a lot of you guys know about, seen about, and at the moment it's indicating it's Bitcoin season. And how did they conclude that? So if 75% of the top 50 coins perform better than Bitcoin over the last 90 days, it is Altseason. To me, as an investor, how you use it is, I tend to actually use it as a bit of a contrarian signal. So if this is at Bitcoin season at the bottom, you can start investing into altcoins because it most likely means that it's the bottom. So you can use this as a contrary signal. I think I wrote it here as well. Where is it here? So that's why I said neutral and not bearish. So use index readings as contrarian signals. So yeah, but don't put too much weight into it. I'm gonna go over real quick. Same with greed and fear index. So basically, when I was preparing this 2-3 days ago, we were at the bottom of extreme fear right here, and I wanted to say, yeah, use this as well as a contrarian signal. So most likely, when there is extreme fear in the markets, you should allocate because most likely we bottom. And this is from Rothschild, buy when there is blood in the streets. And then what's the quote from Warren Buffett? Be fearful when others are greedy and greedy when others are fearful. So, and as you see, it played out very nicely. So, but then of course, to have a really blow off top alt season, you need everyone to be extreme greedy. So it's another, so position when there's extreme fear, maybe position towards altcoins when there's extreme greed, because then we see these blow off tops. So this is not an easy metric as an investor, but yeah, most likely just buy when there is extreme fear. Next up, what I like as well for the market sentiment is to use the altcoin trends in Google Trends. So you just put the subject altcoins, and then you see at the moment it's super low. It's going up a little bit, but I think retail has just left, and you see the search interest for altcoins is just near cycle lows. Yes, you can use it both ways again. So use it when it goes up, then you can start to position it. So you can use it a little bit for timing, and when it tops out, then you have to sell. It's basically the metric of when the Coinbase app is #1 in the App Store. Yeah, make sure you sell. So when it's moving up, you can buy because then you know retail is coming back. But when it's like topping out, when it's #1 in the App Store, make sure you sell. Another nice one I came across is from Into the Cryptoverse. I think his name is Benjamin Cowan. And what he does is he looks at YouTube subscribers, YouTube views, Twitter analysts, Twitter exchanges, Twitter layer 1. So the activity and the views on everything. And to me, this is actually a good metric to see if retail is coming back or not. At the moment, retail is coming back a little bit, but not there yet to have a blow off top alt season. So at the moment, retail is not there, so I don't think altcoins will pump. And why did they leave? And what is the problem? Well, it's super easy. So this is something I made in June last year. All the celebrities that joined crypto just rug pulled everyone. So of course, retail left. All their favorite people just used crypto to rug them. And it's even worse. Even these last few weeks, we saw the Donald Trump meme coin, the Melania meme coin, the Javier Milei meme coin. And I think this was just, how do you say it in English? The straw that broke the camel's back. And everyone just left, retail just left. And yeah, I think if we can conclude the market sentiment, it's neutral to bearish. So not there yet for to buy altcoins. So then we come, I hope someone is still watching, over to supply and demand dynamics. Supply and demand, we are here. So this is the exchange inflows and outflows. At the moment, it's neutral. So this is the inflows into exchanges. These are the outflows. So how can you use it? It's super easy. So when there is negative inflow, for example, it just means that more coins are leaving exchanges, which most likely means that these coins are going into self-custody. So they won't be sold off that easily. And this most likely means that people are accumulating or holding their coins. So that's bullish for Bitcoin in general. So sorry, for altcoins. I did it again with Ethereum because for me, this is the leading indicator for alt season. Next up, and this is one of the most important one of the most important on-chain supply and demand dynamic. That's why I'm going to drink a little bit of water. I gave it 60%. Are the stablecoin liquidity. And to me, stablecoin liquidity, this is just in crypto one of the clearest signs that new capital is entering crypto and is just real on-chain liquidity. And always, well, most likely, this liquidity ends up moving into altcoins. Because what coins are on chain? Not most likely not Bitcoin. It's mostly altcoins that are getting bought with stablecoin liquidity going up. And at the moment, stablecoin liquidity is rising continuously. To me, honestly, this is one of the metrics why I don't sell my crypto. The only time where I'm gonna start scaling out is when I see stablecoin liquidity topping out. And then that's just the signal that get out of here. But at the moment, it's rising at an enormously fast pace. It keeps climbing. So this is, to me, one of the few bullish signs there is for Altseason. Next up. Oh, I thought I was logged in. Okay, so what I wanted to show is the SEX centralized exchange volume Bitcoins versus altcoins. And what the chart showed was that at the moment, alt volume is 2.7x Bitcoin volume. So although Bitcoin dominance is at 64%, altcoins are getting traded by 2.7% x more times than Bitcoin, which to me signals that Altseason is not dead and that risk appetite is still there. So Altseason is not dead, in my opinion, just based on that metric. Yeah. So how can you use this? If you see this climbing, if you see the volume climbing in altcoins, this is super important, and this is a sign that that people want to buy altcoins. So keep an eye on that. And this is bullish. Same with stablecoin liquidity. So yeah, Altseason is not dead yet. But what is the problem? And the problem is scarcity. At the moment, and you guys seen this chart, I'm sure like already 100 times. At the moment, there are around 50,000 tokens created every single day. At the moment, you can see it right here. There are almost 44 million tokens in existence, which are just fragmenting the liquidity. And just to give an example, and I'm sure you heard this, in the 2017 bull run, there were fewer coins than 3,000. I think when I first started out, there were only like 100 or 200 coins. I knew every coin by name, by ticker. I wrote every white paper. At the moment, it's just impossible. So all the liquidity is going everywhere. And although it sounds super insane that there are so much tokens, it doesn't matter as much as people think, because most of these tokens are just worthless and they don't really attract any liquidity, because the bulk of the capital still flows to the top names. And you can just see this here. Almost all of the capital goes towards even the top 10 coins and then just the top 100 coins. So although there are so many tokens in existence, they don't attract that much capital, that much liquidity from the market. So this is fine. Actually, the bigger problem and where the liquidity is going to is the unlocks. So at the moment, this quarter alone, there will be 10 billion in token unlocks. And that's real supply entering the market, which has to be bought up by actual stable coins or dollars, just real liquidity. So there is actual liquidity going to these unlocks. And this is week after week, month after month. These tokens are hitting the markets from VCs. And this is the reason why we don't see an Altseason. Well, because of the scarcity. In my opinion, not because of the 36 million coins, but more because of the 800 million of tokens unlocking every single week. This is bearish. And although this is bearish as well, but yeah. And then next up is the venture capital funding, which is which is not looking great either. So venture capital. So why do I show this? Because often in previous cycles, maybe I can put it full screen. In previous cycles, what we saw is we saw a lot of venture capital demand, and usually afterwards we saw the alt season. So smart money positioned themselves first, and then retail flowed in. But the problem at the moment is capital is just drying up. There is at the moment almost zero demand in the VCs. So don't watch at this, because this is just Binance that raised 2 billion. If you just leave that out, there is almost nothing being raised. So yeah, the VCs are just shifting towards AI, I think. And because of that, cash is no longer being sprayed across the board. And to me, this explained why Altseason hasn't taken off yet. The sorry guys, the early capital has just moved on elsewhere. And we see this as well. For example, the developer activity shows the same thing. So I think because there is less money from VCs, there's a lot of developers just following the money and also just going towards AI. So this is not good. This shows interests not only from retail is going lower, but also from developers is going down. And I think this is a thing which is not mega important, but it would help if there will be more and more developers to get an alt season. Let me see how much I gave it. I gave it a 10%. So obviously it's not as important as global liquidity and the rest, but it's a metric you can look at, and it's super bearish at the moment. So next up, we come to the on-chain data. So we have active addresses, active users, and transaction count. I only gonna show one graph because the graph is just the same in all three of them. It's going down. So we saw the peak here in December, and afterwards it's going down and down and down. Yeah, active addresses down, active users down, and transaction count down. So this is not good for alt season. And yeah, that's about it. So this was this was all my altcoin cheat sheet. If you guys want, maybe I'm gonna put it into the Discord so you guys can have a look at it. Let me just up. And then I'm gonna put it in the Discord. So if you guys are not in our Discord yet, the link is in the description, so you can just join our Discord. It's free. And if you guys want, I can give you the websites of a chart if you need one, or if you have any questions, if you want to talk about it, just join the Discord, and I will glad to give you all the resources you need, and will help you manage your portfolio, let's say. So let's maybe do a quick conclusion. I wrote it already here in my article. So I think the main question everybody's having is, will we see another alt season? I think the answer is yes, but it definitely won't look like the ones we remember. And although I say yes, it can also be no, because if the Fed is really stubborn and will not lower their interest rates, will not start quantitative easing, maybe we won't see an alt season again. But to me, alt season is not that. It's just a little bit delayed, but it just won't look like the ones we remember, because there is a lot of top talent that shifted towards AI, VC funding dried up, developer activity is low as well, on-chain metrics are not good, and the most important thing is there are just so many tokens that the liquidity is more fragmented than ever. And the alt seasons I remember, for example, 2017 and 2020, is that every alt season went up 20, 30, 40%. And I think we will see an alt season, but not with every coin moving up. I think it will be more like one sector than another sector. But yeah, so like I said here, there will always be speculation when liquidity returns. That part of human nature doesn't change. And that's just it. And so when will alt season happen? And like I said, I don't have a crystal ball, but you don't need one either. And so listen carefully, because I think this is the most important thing from the whole video. Just look for these 3 leading indicators, and that's just all you need. Wait for an actual breakdown on Bitcoin dominance. Wait for the Fed to cut interest rates. Wait for the Fed to start QE, to stop QE. Wait for global liquidity to go up, and then you move to altcoins. If, let's say, if the Fed is really stubborn, they don't cut interest rates, they don't stop QT, well, you don't have to. You don't have to buy altcoins. You can just wait. So wait for these leading indicators, and then you buy. I don't know the exact date that this will happen, but I don't have to. You can just wait. This is the superpower of investing. You can just wait and only invest when the time is right. And then the third thing is Bitcoin needs to hold above 120K without draining altcoin liquidity. So just wait. Where is the Bitcoin chart? Wait until Bitcoin consolidates here, and then we can see an alt season. Don't do it the other way around. Just wait, and it's every cycle is happening exactly the same way. So no, this cycle is not different. It's just not the timing. Just don't allow. Just doesn't align with all the other alt season where it's like 320 days. It's just a bit delayed, in my opinion. Maybe the fourth thing I can add here, and then I'm gonna cut the stream off, the video, sorry. Maybe one of the triggers will be the Ethereum Spectra upgrade, which will launch the Ethereum staking ETF, which will maybe give some institutional investors the opportunity to buy into the Ethereum ETF, and maybe this will spark the alt season. And yeah, it's aligning all together to me. This will most likely be in the summer. Rate cuts will be in June. Normally the Fed said as well they will stop QT mid-June as well. So who knows? It can align. Just watch out. And because of all the tariff and the macroeconomic news, maybe we will go into recession. I give that a 50-50 as well. So wait on the leading indicators and you will be better than most investors. So guys, I really hoped you liked the video. This was it for me. It was a really long one. I really hope you stayed till the end. If you liked it, please like the video. I worked about it for a long time. Leave a comment, join our Discord. And also, if you want a more practical approach on how you can invest into Altseason, in what coins you have to invest, I'm going to talk tomorrow with Zero Cool, and we're going to do a bit more technical analysis into a bit more altcoins. So make sure you check out that live stream as well. That will be on Saturday, so tomorrow. And yeah, guys, thank you very much, and I see you all into the next video. Bye, guys.